Welcome to the House Podcast is what you're listening to or what you're watching or both. If you're doing both, then good on you. I appreciate you giving me your time to listen in on what we're going to talk about today. We'll recap Anzac round. We'll get into some exciting news about the NRL expansion, and we'll also talk about some down teams and some up teams. So pretty much the usual. We're going to talk about who's been playing shit, and then we're going to talk about and potentially suss out who's going to win it all at the end. But for now, we'll start with the Anzac round. A lovely round as usual. Every Aussie gets up for it. Every Aussie gets up for the whole day. I mean, we've got Australia Day, but that's become very political and filled with just other nonsense and other bullshit. Anzac Day is the real Australian Day. Everyone is on board. There's no one in the whole country who doesn't understand what it's all about, who doesn't get involved with what it's all about, and who everyone is just all behind it, and rightfully so. If someone isn't, or if someone is being disrespectful, we're there to call them out. And we're there to teach them why that day is so special to Australians and New Zealanders. But another good day and another good round of football. And of course, the biggest game of Anzac round is the Roosters versus the Dragons. And another excellent pre-game ceremony. Just always get you fired up, ready for a massive game ahead. And it was an entertaining game. You know, whenever you have the Dragons in a game, sometimes you're just like, you know, if it wasn't Anzac round, I probably wouldn't watch the Dragons play. And I understand that sometimes I feel that way too. But being the Roosters are, I mean, even in a down year like this year, and we'll talk about the Roosters a little bit more further on, but even in a down year, they've got the players, they've got the history, they've got the fan base for it to be an exciting game, even if they're in a down year. But this game was actually quite entertaining for the first 30 minutes, first half. And then the Roosters started to go on with it in the second half. But the Roosters just had too many high-level players with high-level experience ready to step up for this occasion. This isn't just regular football. It's Anzac Day football. It's Anzac round football. It has something else to it. It's almost spiritual for the players and the coaches and the officiating crew. It just means more. So when you have players who have been there before, the likes of Tedesco, Daniel Tupou, Angus Crichton, Victor Radley, they've all got many of these Anzac games under their belt. When you look at the Dragons, they've got a lot of players who haven't played in this game or haven't played many of this game. So it kind of makes sense that the Roosters did play the way that they did. They just got too many good players to continue to play like trash for too long, and you saw it in this game. They look like the Roosters of old, from the last 2, 3, 4 years, and when they're on like this, everyone loves watching them. I mean, Roosters do have opposing fans from teams like the Rabbitohs, who no matter who's on their team, no matter how they're playing, they're gonna get booed. But for fans like myself, who I've always had some sort of affinity towards the Roosters, I always enjoy watching them play. They've always had some really good players. So when they're on, I enjoy the game more. It's more entertaining to me. A game that comes to mind is when they put 74 or 72 on the Tigers a couple of years ago. Even though it was a complete blowout, with the players that they have and with how those players play, it's always entertaining. So even in a blowout, you stay on board because just some of their attack is just magical. And you saw it on the weekend again. Our Sandon Smith, he stepped up to the occasion big time. I'm not sure if he's even played an Anzac game before, but he stepped up and he was ready to go and he played outstandingly. put on, was it 22 points of his own of the 46? So the Roosters defeated them 46-16. And like I said at the start, it was close. Dragons had a couple of moments where you thought, this could end up being a close game towards the end, but no such luck for the Dragons, and the Roosters went on with it. So the question is, what do we do with the Roosters? They're 3-5. They're sitting at 13th on the ladder at the moment. And here are the next 5. They have the Dolphins. Then they've got the bye. Then they've got the Dogs, the Sharks, and the Raiders. And that all goes into then Origin Game 1 period. So that's a pretty tough schedule. And then going into the Origin period, that makes it even tougher. So I'm not exactly sure how the Roosters will navigate the entire Origin period. So from the next couple weeks until round essentially 19 or 20, they could lose the players such as Tedesco, Crichton, Spencer Leniu. I definitely would take Tedesco over Edwards at the moment, but that's a separate debate that we'll probably get into next week or the week after once Origin squads are on the horizon. But they could lose those players, so they might struggle through the Origin period. But the good news is they will most likely keep their halves. Now, you've heard me talk about it before. This is the year of the halves. You're going to see the teams at the end of the year have the most success with the best and the most experienced halves. That's how it's going to be. So the Roosters will most likely keep the halves. Whether they play Savala or Townsend, they'll keep those two and they'll keep Sand and Smith. So they'll have that to aid them through the Origin period. Should they lose a few players, they'll have that familiarity in the halves. They'll keep that structure in the halves for the rest of the team. So these are the keys. The key to the Roosters staying afloat is surviving the Origin period. They just have to go and try and stay 500. Just try and win at least half of those games. And then they have to pray that they stay healthy. Their big guys stay healthy, and then they can go on a very strong run, the last 4 to 6 weeks of the season. That is how the Roosters are going to play finals football. And if it was up to me, I would absolutely want the Roosters in finals football. It makes it more exciting. You have another big club in there with big name players who've got the experience of finals football. So that's what they have to do. I believe they can do that. They've got the coach. Like I said, they've got the halves. So should they lose a few players during the Origin period, they'll have enough to survive, win half their games, then go on a strong run towards the end of the season. And that should make them make the 8. That 6th to 8th spot, it's always up for grabs the last week or the last 2 weeks of the regular season. So if the Roosters do that, they've got a shot, and I'd like to see them in the finals because when they're playing good football, it's entertaining, and I almost root for them to win as long as they're not playing the Sharks. So other games in the Anzac round filled with controversy. I'm always on here seemingly bashing the refs. I'm not going to do that this week. One note I do have on the officiating is it didn't get better, but it also became inconsistent. So you started seeing some penalties get sin bin, some did not. Some were just on report, some were on report and penalties. Some were overturned from the bunker now. We're starting to see high tackle penalties get challenged. If you're gonna do it this hard, if you're gonna go this tough on these penalties, you got to be consistent because everyone's pissed off enough as it is. You hear these commentators, they're shutting their mouths because it's getting out of hand. I saw a video of Joey Johns today I think it was on the Sunday Footy Show. He wasn't happy. He's not happy. He's saying, as a fan and for the fans, it's getting out of hand. And I agree with him. And it's what I've been speaking about. But if you're going to do it this rough, you're going to piss people off. But if you're going to be inconsistent and you're going to go, and that inconsistency is going to go against teams, and the fans of those teams are going to be upset even more so. So if you're going to go this hard, if you're going to try and lay down your law, you better be consistent. Because if you're inconsistent, you're asking for double the amount of criticism, double the amount of trouble. But that's all I'm going to really speak on it for this week, because nothing really changed. It didn't get better. Last week I spoke on one particular incident that baffled me. I didn't see that particular one again, but you saw some similar ones where, player gets hit, spun into another defender. Defender can't move. Defender doesn't know where he's going to get, where the attacker's going to be after he gets hit. But anyway. All right, let's go to a fun one now, because that's what we're here for. We're just here for a good time and talk about some football. The Bears coming back to the NRL. Now, reports came out during the week that the NRL is going back to Western Australia, that the WA government proposed their plan for the Bears to be picked back up and reintroduced to the NRL, and apparently the NRL has approved that proposal, and basically everything's in place. It just has to be confirmed, which apparently will be confirmed after Magic Round. That's very exciting. We've tried before, the Western Reds. We've failed over in Western Australia before. It's a AFL dominant city. Other than Perth, there's not much else going on. It's a lot of empty land. Not empty in terms of no one owns it, but empty in terms of a lot of it's uninhabited. A lot of cattle stations and desert. So Perth is the only market essentially, and if you can't survive there, you don't go over there. I believe though that the league is in a position, and it's big enough now, that we're going back and we're not coming back. We're going over there for good now. I believe the league has seen how much of a stamp it has on Australia in the last 2 years especially. We've succeeded with the Dolphins, albeit it's in South Queensland, a rugby league dominant place, but the expansion worked. The fans have onboarded the Dolphins, and we've seen them embraced with two hands, and you see that there are new Dolphin fans in Australia. So I believe that once they're over there, it's going to work. The Perth Bears is what they're likely going to be named, but with only a short time until their return, a year and a half, 2027, coaches and players need to be signed. So let's talk about which coach and which players are likely to be signed, or who I would sign. So coach, I didn't really have one in mind because I didn't really know who was going to be available. I know who's not coaching at the moment, but contract-wise, it's a little bit more difficult to find that information out as opposed to player contracts. But the reports of Brad Arthur is the front man at the moment, and I actually don't mind that at all. He's built a club, essentially. He's been there for the lows. He's been there for the highs with Parramatta. He understands how it goes both ways. He understands what it takes to succeed as a coach. So if Brad Arthur were to get the job, I actually don't mind it one bit. I've always liked him. Never had an issue with his coaching ways. Never seen an issue. Obviously, you as a Parramatta fan, you would like to see him win a bit more. But, he did win some. So if he was to be the inaugural coach for the Perth Bears, I'm all for it. Apparently, I saw an article today where apparently I think it's his wife that's got family from, or she is from, Western Australia as well. So that also helps, because it's not going to be necessarily easy to get some players or coaching staff to go across country and set up in Western Australia. Now, for some younger players or younger coaches looking for a crack, I'm sure they don't mind. But for players, coaches who are settled in these eastern states with families, it might be a little bit tough to get them to go over all the way over to Perth, even though from what I hear and from what I'm seeing, Perth looks absolutely incredible. It's actually on the list to go this year, so we'll see how that pans out. All right, let's talk about players now. Who would be the first player that I sign if I was the general manager of the Perth Bears for 2027? Now, I took a look, and Cameron Munster and Pappenhausen are both off contract for 2027, although I think it would be very difficult to lead them away from the Storm. I could see Munster possibly leaving the club at some point, but I think that would only be to a Queensland team like the Bulldogs, like the Broncos or Dolphins or the likes of that. I don't think you could get them to up and leave the Storm, Craig Bellamy, what they have there, the success that they've had and will have there to go and start a new venture out west. I can't see that. The same with Matt Burton and Hammer, both off contract 2027. Burton's he's put in the hard yards to set up a foundation at the Bulldogs, and now they're starting to see the success of that. And as I spoke about last week, I see a long-term success for the Bulldogs, so I doubt he would be up and leaving that from what he's built. Same with Hammer. He's been there, done that. He just did that with the Bulldogs. With the Dolphins. He's been there at the start. He's now built it. He's now an integral part of the Dolphins and why they have fans. So although some of those players would likely be first on the list, I can't see them leaving. So the first player I would sign is Kalen Ponga. He would be off contract. He'd be ready to sign for the 2027 season. And with Newcastle looking like a bit of a stalling franchise right now, I think it would be a good move. The Knights would free up some cap space. Kalen would get a fresh start. You know, he'd feel like a leader. He'd feel like an integral part. Should he go over there as the first player signed? And he would, because I'm the GM in this scenario. He depending on who else I signed, he would be my captain or co-captain. But you'd have to absolutely spend the bag on him. You know, you're not getting him for cheap. You wouldn't get him from cheap even if he was to move down the road to another club. You're not getting him for cheap. So to go all the way across to Western Australia and a new club that has some risks, not a lot, but has some risks, you'd have to spend 1.5, 1.6 million a year to get him over there, and it'd be a 2-3 year minimum deal. But obviously I'm the GM. I have a salary cap. I also don't have any players, so I'm looking at him number one. So, of course, I'm going to spend the money because it would absolutely be worth it, because he is the type of player to get new fans in a new market over in Western Australia. He epitomizes entertaining football when he's in form. I love watching him play. Now, he's going to cost a lot, yes, but it's so worth it. I can't express enough how worth it is when you have all these other liabilities to fulfill over when starting a new club in a completely different state that doesn't have any NRL at the moment. He epitomizes the player that you want. New fans, new market. Get him over there, sign him. I'm signing him. He's my first player at the moment. Then I'd be looking at the availability of Luke Brooks. Off contract, ready to sign. I've got my fullback I want a half. Now, this may not go through though. With DCE leaving Manly, it might be incredibly difficult to also get him out of 4 Pines. You know, I could offer him a lot of money, but I think Manly, understanding his value right now, would probably either match it or up the deal and keep him there. So I'd look at him, but if Manly were to keep him, I'd then be looking at Scott Drinkwater. Ready to sign. Cowboys are ebbing and flowing right now, not having any particular success. I think I could get him out of North Queensland and get him over to the Perth Bears, and I'd be signing him with every intention of playing him in the 6. He's a very dynamic and he's a very smart football player. So for him to play that running 5'8" role, he's absolutely got that in him. And I could easily see him playing that role. So I'd sign him with every intention of putting him in the 6. I've got my fullback already with Kalen. I'd be signing him as a 6, and then we'll get some young half or we'll get some older veteran half just to fill that position and until we get our development system set up. So I'd be looking at those 2 first. So number 1, I have Kalen. In the halves, if I haven't got Brooks, then I've got Drinkwater at 6. And every intention of him being a very good 6, which I think he can be. Then I'd be looking at the likes of Britton Nikora and Jordan Ricky. Either one or both. They're both going to be off contract, ready to sign. And also, probably should have prefaced this, but these are the players who are off contract and actually would be available to sign November 1 this year for the 2027 season. Obviously, you could say, I want Payne Haas. Or, who else is playing? I want Ben Hunt. Or whoever, Jerome Hughes. But if they're not off contract, they're not in situations where they're looking for a release. So you're not going to get them. So I'm actually trying, even though this is a hypothetical situation, I'm trying to do it hypothetically accurately, whereas this could be possible. Okay? Should have prefaced that. But then I've been looking at Britton Nikora, Jordan Ricky, both excellent back rowers with entertaining play, high-level skills. So they bring experience, they bring entertainment over to new fans in a new market to get new fans into the game of rugby league. Those are the type of players I'm looking at. As well as quality football, they're also entertaining footballers. So it's a win-win. You get high-level football players who are also exciting so they can fulfill that secondary role that the Perth Bears will be looking at. They want to win in the premiership, but they also need to gain a new fan base out west in a new market, in a new state, in a new city. So the NRL understands that, the coach and the GM and the players, they want to win, but the NRL needs them to be successful in other formats as well, off the field as well as on the field. So I'd have Kalen Ponga at my fullback. I'd have Scott Drinkwater in the 6. Then I'd have Nikora or Ricky in the 11 or 12. And I think that sets up a good foundation to then sign some younger players or some older veterans who are looking for a new club. But at the moment, as the GM, those are my 3 or 4. And I think that's a pretty good 3 or 4 to set up for the Perth Bears. Feeder club. That's going to be an interesting one. Now, obviously, it seems like their feeder club will be either in the New South Wales or Queensland Cup. The Warriors feeder club is in the New South Wales Cup. So how they're going to work out feeder club, travel's going to be an interesting one. They're going to set up a base in Perth, play some games there, back to back, then come over to Sydney, Queensland, New Zealand, Melbourne, do a run there, then go back for a few weeks, or they're going to do half-half. I'm not sure. I'm interested to see how that plays out because that's quite a lot of travel. If you got a game in Sydney, back to Perth, back to Brisbane, back to Perth, that's quite a lot. Yeah, so that travel portion of having a team 5 hours a flight from Sydney, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and hopefully it doesn't actually cause any disruption in terms of quality of gameplay. I doubt it, but I wouldn't like to see that. All right. Who would win the grand final based off what we've seen so far this season? If you looked at which team has played the best bit of football, whether that be the best period, the best half, or the best full game of football, who has played the best so far? If you looked at that, I would have to say the Storm would be your champions. At their best, they look and feel like the best team in the comp. If you take into account every factor, they have some of the best players. Hughes, Pappenhausen, Grant, Munster. They have one of the best coaches in Craig Bellamy, in probably the best system, that is the Melbourne Storm, with some of the most high-level experience. You're talking finals experience, grand finals, origins, international tests, and the ability to put that all together as a whole unit. You've seen it in periods this year where it all comes into play and they just look dominant. They're relentless on attack. They're super disciplined in defense. They just look untouchable. And you saw it the other night against the Rabbitohs at moments. Just when Pappenhausen, Munster, Hughes, and Grant line up on attack, mate, they're deadly. They're deadly and they're going to put points on the board. And then Craig Bellamy understands and drives those forwards to be able to stay disciplined, play long minutes, and when they're on the field, do their job and make the absolute most of it. That is what he instills in his players. And you say it. I mean, it's been the biggest thing for the Melbourne Storm for the last 25 years. Do your job. Next man up. That's their mentality over in Melbourne. You put it all together, and they're a damn fucking good team. And from what I've seen so far from all the teams, at their best, they look the best, they feel the best. And if you had to judge it so far based on that, I would absolutely say that Storm would be your champions at the end of the year. You never know. You might be looking at a Storm Broncos GF. Who knows? Broncos played out of their skin this past weekend. You never know. You never know. Panthers dead last on the ladder. Hell yeah, they are. And I've honestly been waiting to see it for a while. Now, I like the Panthers. I have a lot of mates who are Panthers fans. I grew up almost in Penrith, you know. But, man, some of the cockiness of players and fans over the last 4 years has gotten to me. And I'm almost happy that they are falling off a fucking cliff right now. It's making me smile. But you're seeing a massive grand final hangover this year. And it's not just they've lost so-and-so. It's not just that. The players they have kept are just not playing at the level that we've seen them play for the last 4 or 5 years. But this could end up being a season with the worst finish after winning a premiership the previous season. You know, in probably many decades, if not in all of history, now that we've got a 17 club comp. You know, if they finish last, it could be like they're last at the moment. If they continue down this road and they finish last because of the 17 teams, it would be the worst finish in premiership history after winning a premiership the year before. Now, if you're a Panthers fan, you're bloody hoping to God that doesn't happen, because you've been in the history books for many positive reasons the last 4 years. You don't want to be in the history books for this reason come the end of the year. Although that kind of would make me happy and give me a little bit of give me something to actually debate these Panthers fans that I know so many of. So the question is, can they turn it around? I don't have any notes under that except for one that just says no. So you debate that at home and come back to me with that. Magic round is upon us. It's going to be wild. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be chaotic. The security there is going to have their hands full. But it's all a bit of... They're all just footballers, fans of football who just want to have fun. And I think it's a great thing for the game, having a magic round. It opens up the discussion for a potential magic round somewhere else. Perth, New Zealand, Sydney maybe, although Sydney's probably lower on that list than others. But Magic Round's always a great round. If you're going to it live, enjoy the fuck out of it, because you might not get a chance to watch that many games in one weekend or see that many of these players, of your favourite players again. So make the most of it. Enjoy Brisbane, but be safe. But for everyone watching, it's going to be a sick weekend. Starts with the Sharks-Para game. Sharks will flog them. If you haven't caught on board yet, I'm a Sharks fan. But I can't wait for it. Neither can you, I'm sure. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Some good topics, some fun topics. Fun for me, at least. Sorry, Panthers fans. But that's going to do it. Enjoy your week until after next round of football when we talk about that. Enjoy. I'll see you later.